Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Skies of Arcadia. We have the blue moon crystal, and now we are returning to Yafutoma to give it to... Well, we need to give the Windsong Orb to Lord Mikado, but we got a moon crystal, which is great. This is going to be a very active segment, which we'll probably break up based upon the encounters that we sort of get ourselves into. But this is where, I mean, right now it's felt like a fairly standard sort of fetch quest, and actually we should consider that this is like one of the few moonstone crystals that it's like... So we got the red one ourselves, and then Valua takes it. We get the green one. It's actually not even something we grab ourselves. It's something that the Elder had the entire time. This is one of the few ones that we just go out and we grab for ourselves. You would think that it would just be like, let's grab these crystals and go from here to here to here, but we lose them. They move in and out of possession. Things are moved all around. It's really great. So I like that it's not simple. We want to borrow the crystal. Mikado, it is a symbol of our royal possession. I would like to keep it in my possession at least while you remain in Yafutoma. Alright. Reasonable. Right? Moegi, daughter, successor to the throne? It's a little awkward. Because if we remember, I got confused because they want the Magosphere, but maybe that's what they call this. But there was the thing we got from the Zivibum Bane. So we get to have a celebration, and it's like, Yafutoma is awesome. Just sort of how honestly everything is sort of expressed. Right? And that's a nice thing, too, with the text. You handed out the Blue Moon Crystal over to Lord Mikado. It's not like this was stolen from you or any of this other shit. It's like, you know, so I'm trying to establish that the Moon Crystals move around from people's possession, even while we have them. But the ways that in which they are moved around are sort of different, which I really enjoy. And we have kind people in this space. Mikado is a good character. Moegi is a nice individual. We've talked about, we will see them, but Daigo. And then also, but it comes with the negatives, right? We have Miraji here, who's just sort of terrible. You know? This is, I enjoy Yafutoma because it has a bit more of a complex, not overly complex, bit of social structure to it, right? Ixotaka didn't have that. Nazara, we don't really engage with the culture too much, even though we spend time with folks, but it's like, you know. And this is a good moment for Enrique. It's like, how does a nobleman treat somebody? You know, and Enrique's playing into sort of patriarchal ideas of chivalry that some people playing the game might roll their eyes at, but, I mean... Enrique is still a strong character who sees the poor behavior of other individuals, and, you know, he has his own ideals that he wants to live up to, so he, you know. And so this is a little bit of an interesting thing where it's like codes of conduct, you know, so Valua, we understand, is... or at least Enrique has an idea of sort of chivalry, right? A concept that we might balk at, which might seem a bit anachronistic too, considering how vaguely progressive Valua is in its gender politics at times, but still, it sort of exists. And Enrique has a crush on the princess. Prince from another place has a crush on the princess. They're both two good characters, though. I like them. But we have this sort of, like, dissatisfied nobles here. And then, of course, we have... who else? But Beleza. Valua has entered the space, which will come in handy for Miraji and his father, but not for us. So now we have a little bit more of a complex political hierarchy weaving in and out, and sort of what people are doing, and notions of coup d'etat, and that. And I'm not saying that the game really is going in depth with these concepts, but they have them exist. This is not a static space. Characters are, they possess more motives in Yafutoma than I think they do in Ixutaka. Ixutaka can be fairly reductive in how it handles things. Miraji and Kangan, just waiting for their opportunity to strike. Right, but here it's more like not. I use the word nuance, but you have to understand that nuance in Skies of Arcadia is still fairly simple and easy to understand. But I mean, we're dealing with ideas of like, okay, so in Ixutaka it was about how is first contact handled, and then it's like, okay, so what happens when multiple political factions come into contact? What occurs then? What occurs if some people are dissatisfied, and we keep on coming into that notion of power being corruptive, even though we have characters in this space who actually reject that notion. Yafutoma has a little bit more going on to it, or going on in it, rather. Certainly more than what we've experienced in the past. And so we have Beleza and Vigoro. Beleza okay, Vigoro being a total asshole. Although we will talk about Vigoro perhaps later on when we encounter him in another section of the game. But Beleza still has some sense of decorum, which is... It's strange. Beleza is a character of a certain varying degrees of complexity, right? She serves her empire. She has her motivation for doing it, which we are made aware of. But, it's this person who, she clashes with Ramirez, right? She just wants to dock and talk to the king, right? But it's never that simple, right? But it's still... when we encounter Beleza, there's something about the way that she conducts herself that we still admire to some respect, even though she's sort of manipulative. We certainly respect her and especially Gregorio more than we respect any of the other admirals. We fear Ramirez and Galcian, but we don't respect them necessarily. But here's a pirate choice, but we have to be diplomatic this time, so we wait and see what happens. But there's nothing we can do right now. And this is also, like, pirate choices in this game, I've said that they tend to favor sort of audacity and stuff, but they also respect the value of, like, the culture around you and the people around you, so that decision is partially a decision based upon whether or not you think certain actions are safe, right? But it's also like, okay, if I start fighting the Valuans here, how does that affect Yafutoma? So you have to think about that. You start thinking a bit beyond yourself, which is kind of nice. They want to occupy Yafutoma, right? And so this is... we really have more of a direct, sort of more interesting and compelling conflict, I think, than Ixutaka. Ixutaka was maybe emotionally evocative. This one is a little bit more interesting on a phrenic level, right? The things that it makes us consider when it comes to sort of politics and other things. Like I said, not ridiculously complex, but still, you know, things, you know, it's a little bit more political, which is a little bit more interesting to me. Even though it is interesting to have the people who in Ixutaka caused our, you know, the most trouble, well, not the most trouble, but also a lot of trouble with the Gigas, was actually the people of the country themselves trying to rise up against their oppressors. Which is not to say that that is not something people should do. People should always rise up against their oppressors, but in this game, the means through which you rise up and fight your oppressor matters, and so resorting to the Gigas was this thing where it would, you know, there are stand-in for weapons that are just sort of beyond the pale. And so here we might run, I forget how Blueheim comes into the equation, but we run into similar complications. I lost my train of thought. Ixutaka, interesting because the Gigas is summoned by the people there, which is emotionally resonant, but here, more interesting to me, sort of, I mean, it's simple politics, but it is politics, right? I sort of enjoy it. What should we do? Save Lord Mikado now? No, we have to run and hide. Which you would think is not a very good pirate choice, but it's like, again, we need to figure out what's going on. We can't, so audacity is something that is backed up in those decisions, but also, you know, just well-thought action is also something that occurs, because a captain also would need to fall into those categories. Is there something over here that I can open up? Is there a chest? Yes. Sacrulen crystals, awesome. I feel like I lost myself talking about Ixutaka for a minute. Ixutaka was just about the corruptive nature that can come from wielding power rashly. Right? King Ixutaka had every reason to do what he did. The problem is that he didn't understand the power that he wielded, that's all. I don't want to imply that he necessarily did something, like,
wow,
that I have a moral compunction against, because I don't. Valua needed to be confronted, but I don't know, I feel like I'm equivocating too much. I shouldn't. So we need to go and find Daigo, and hopefully he will help us. But he was exiled and sentenced to live on an island far away. He would go out sailing and disregard his duties as a prince. Daigo is another character who also has a sense of honor. So we're talking about the notion of, you know, power corrupting, and I was just talking about that with Ixutaka, but it's also something that happens here with Kangen and Murajai, Miraji, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's something intimately expressed by Valua, so, you know, we sort of deal with things as they happen. The point I'm desperately trying to collect my wits to express and failing to is merely that I enjoy that Yafutoma has implied politics, or explicit politics to it, that Ixutaka did not. Or Yafutoma. Yafutoma does, but Ixutaka does not. And that's just sort of how it all functions. And on our way up, we get to fight the Tenko. Very cool pirates. We'll just full-on attack right now. This sort of exiled prince with his own group of followers who are pirate followers. This pirate prince. It's a very cool pulp notion, kind of a romantic notion too, I think. The exiled prince who will come back to defend his homeland. You know, that sort of stuff is very appealing to me. Or at least on a vague symbolic level, the way that all of those things sort of play out are interesting to me. We'll get through this boss fight, though. Boss fight? Well, we'll get through this fight. It's not a boss fight. There are boss fights coming up in this segment. And in fact, there's quite a lot of things coming up, enough so that I might need to break up a lot of the action. Boss fights and ship battles and politicking and all of sorts of stuff. So much happens during this segment of the game that I really enjoy. And I guess, again, my point is that it just happens with a degree of slightly greater complexity than what we've had in the past, which I enjoy. There's multiple people with multiple motivations and factions and all these things, and there's something about that is that's really great, that I really enjoy. And it also, I like the way that Beleza sort of functions as a villain, compared to some other characters, right? The notion of manipulation and like things, it's not a new notion. It's not like, oh my gosh, a character that manipulates people instead of just threatens them. But no, it's like somebody who has all the angles covered, like this really intelligent, capable female admirable. I find some things about her admirable, but she's also an admiral. You know, I think Beleza shows herself to be one of the more interesting and vaguely complex villains that we have, even though this is not a game necessarily with complex villains. Ramirez has some complexity, Beleza has some complexity, Gregorio does, but that's about it. I don't even think Galcian really has that much complexity, even though he's still an effective villain. And we are fighting as we go up these steps, just to sort of let me collect my thoughts. Again, we don't want to affect our pirate ranking too much as we move forward. So we're sort of dealing with that as well. The only downside is that these enemies are fairly fast, and so in most rounds of action they tend to act before we do. And they buff themselves and everything, which is kind of a pain. But I suppose the abilities that are available to them stress them as a smart fighting force, which is important because they sort of, and through Jiao Mao, are an extension of Daigo as a character, right? So how these characters fight and how they are able to buff each other and heal themselves and things like that, they function more complexly than other enemies in the space. And so we understand that the Tenko are a formidable fighting force, and so that Daigo has to be somebody of a similar degree of formidableness, in order to command them. I want to stress, certainly, that there are games that get the politic angle of things down much better. You could play, and I've mentioned this title, or at least this series before, if you want a game that does politics really fucking well, play a Suikoden game. Play Suikoden 2, play Suikoden 3, play 5. 5's really good about royal politics. 3 is very good about sort of multinational politics and things. Two's good too, but I mean, so I'm not saying that Skies is doing anything too brilliant here, but what I am saying is that what it's doing is sort of something I alluded to in the previous segment, is that as we've moved sort of forward within the game itself has sort of decided that it's okay to add more complexity onto interactions between peoples. So it's not moving in a sharp sense away from sort of the broad pulp action that we've had before, but it is moving towards a place of slightly more refinement, and the latter half of the game, even though we're still on disc 1, which, if you're panicking, don't worry, we're actually probably like 60% through the game, right? We're pretty... There's this, I'm trying to think, this, Dangrel Island, and a couple other things, but we'll get through the game. Make no mistakes. But the game itself has no problems with sort of adding a little bit more complexity in spaces as you spend more time with the game and with the characters. These things will reach sort of their peak as we head towards the end of the game, and sort of character motivations. Man, I'm having trouble saying words today. Motivations become a little bit more clear, or a little bit clearer. There again, my trouble with words. We have definitely the game sort of having a lot more confidence in certain areas as we head into this half of it than at the beginning. And actually, Skull Shield is really good here. Because if they attack, no damage and it counters. And they tend to attack before we do.
Over there.
I would like to say that the high encounter rate makes things approaching Daigo interesting, but it's more or less, it's more that it certainly does convey a feeling of there being a lot of people in the space, and like I've said, these are extensions of Daigo, sort of in, you know, some sort of sense, giving a sense of, you know, the vastness of what he commands, or the strength of what he commands. But man, the encounter rate in this game is something, isn't it? Although I'm wondering if we're just hitting encounters... No, we're not. I was like, if we're hitting them just at every platform, then it sort of makes sense. Because the game will do that sometimes, but not always. Which I guess is what sometimes means. Sometimes just means not always. So here we are. Jiao Mao. They're awesome. Do we have to fight them again?
For you to die.
No, Daigo comes out. Heck yeah. Super cool. Has his own little theme and everything. I like that. It's like, of course that's the brother. We've said the name plenty of times. A long time ago, the twins challenged me to a fight. They wanted my sword, so I beat them senseless. They pledged their loyalty to me. I figured as their leader I could control them a little, so they'd stop attacking everyone. A character of really good cheer. I enjoy it. And Fina's saying, like, oh, a very different type of prince than Enrique. And yeah, it is. You know. but despite their behavioral differences, both have a strong sense of honor. So, last segment I talked about certain things that transcend boundaries, right? Well, one of those things in Skies of Arcadia, then, is a sense of honor, of honesty in action, which is great. I don't know about helping the Tenko. Of course we're gonna help. We're the good guys. That's what we do. Alright. And Enrique commiserates with Daigo, which is nice. So like I've said, it's just more complex. Like, everybody has certain stakes in things. It's like Enrique feels this sort of obligation because it's Valua that are fighting. Daigo has all of these things, and also we have the romance between Enrique and Moegi, and all of these things. So we've managed to find some levity in some of these moments too, but we also have sort of like different views upon situations, all sort of converging in ways that are, I think, right, compelling. And so we are going to have a lot of fighting ahead of us, that is for sure. So we need to, unfortunately, traverse back down. Hey, let's talk to this guy. Look at that scar. And this one has like like claw weapons. I like that NPCs in this game, even sort of semi-one-off characters like that, the game goes to great care to craft sort of NPCs that, I mean, it doesn't use a lot of generic, like, this is just a guy. They all have designs to them and other things, like this old fellow, with the little cheepy bird on his thing, right? Like, it would be so easy, I think, for a modern game to, right, just sort of slap, like, generic looking, like, okay, these are what the pirates look like, each one will have different dialogue, but it's like, no. This game, and certainly other games do it too, but this game is like, okay, we are going to have some sort of care crafted into our NPCs, and now we're going to fight the Armada. So we are going to need to get our ship back, which is the biggest hurdle. Daigo's ship. And like this is another thing where I'm talking about where it's like things are maturing a bit. So the scale of conflicts, like, and that's not to say that the scale of conflicts that we've had in Nazra or Ixitaka were small, but they're starting to involve more people. Like, a lot of stuff is just like more people are getting involved. And there's something really exciting about that for me when I consider it, when I consider what it means sort of in my head. You know, Esperanza was sort of an example of this, but now it's like, oh, and this is Vigoro's ship, the Draco, with its giant gun on the front that isn't compensating for anything. And they gave the Delphinus to Miraji, I'm gonna say. The Lynx is here. Like, this is just like a big thing, right? Right? And Beleza, her motivation too, we've sort of talked about how she sort of has feelings for Galcian. Galcian, interesting because he is as asexual a character as you can get in this game. By which I mean there are plenty of people who show a fair degree of affection for Galcian. And I don't mean just like, oh, they like the guy, but it's like, they like the guy. And Galcian doesn't give a shit. But now it's like, see, this is great. It's like we have sort of what we've been building up to a lot in games. Or in the game, rather. All these ships that we've fought, it's usually been like these one-on-one things, or like the Delphin is breaking through like one or two ships or something like that. But in this case, it's like, here we freaking go. We've had multiple ships in the sky, so we are going to have just a ton of... we're going to have our big battle, and we're going to have Kangan scheming in the background to use the Gigas, and we're having Valua and other troops, mutinous Yafutomans, and fighting against pirates and loyalists and all these things. Like, it's really great. I say that phrase too often. I say like, oh, this is cool, or it's really great. But when I say it's really great, I just mean that it's sort of a culmination of promises that the game has made. Or a moment where it's making promises. Right?
Uh-huh.
Oh, so heroic. So cool, so dashing. And then I like this.
Let's try this.
So we still get to have a little bit of our humor. But see, like, it just keeps on tossing us into... like, one of the reasons I like this segment a lot is because there's a lot of different things that we have to deal with. Taking back our own ship, which is sort of this strange mirror to what we had to do when we were encountering Alfonso at the beginning. It's like, this is one of our... I think this is our first boarding action since then, and it's on our own ship. And there's something sort of interesting about that. Sort of taking a scenario that we are used to and changing the context in a sort of significant way. This is something that the game does quite a bit, particularly, as I've kept on saying, towards the latter end of the game. It will take sort of familiar scenarios or familiar characters and sort of invert or subvert some of the associations that we have with them, and it will not only recontextualize spaces or characters, but it will recontextualize what we understand Skies of Arcadia to be as a game. We sort of sit back and say, like, well, this is a simplistic game, and it always remains, to some degree, a simplistic game. But it also, at the same time, is a game that refines itself the more it goes forward. Not in radical ways, I keep on stressing, not in radical ways, but enough that where you might have thought, like, okay, this is just the bad guy is just like a simple bad guy and his evil lieutenant or whatever. Like, our understanding of Ramirez is going to shift. Our understanding of a lot of characters shifts. And it's important that those shifts happen, because not only does it lend itself to a more believable world, whatever believable might mean in the context of a game, but it also makes sort of the player re-engage with the game as they go through it from moment to moment. I mean, you're always engaging with the game no matter what. That's part of what a game is engagement on various different levels. But Skies will ask of the player to reassess their understanding of the game world, or of certain aspects of the game world, or even certain aspects of how the game world is being presented, and it will sort of shift those things around and ask that the player refine their notion of what is occurring at any given time, while still keeping some of those general concepts that we can derive some degree of power from. An evil empire, exiled prince, Robin Hood pirate. Like, those are all concepts that we hold on to and cling to and define our space and our understanding of the space, but also we have situations that take those archetypes and those constructs and ask us to re-examine how they're being used, and also show us that there's a large amount that you can get out of such sort of archetypal structures if you're willing to spend time and engage with them. We had a seed from the last episode. I think it was a sylph seed, but we're probably going to give that to Vise. We are going to, although, because Aika's pretty good on her quick right now, we are eventually going to have the means to purchase seeds of any kind we want with an infinite stock. We'll get to that when it comes. You can bust the game wide open with that, and it's awesome. And so we just need to go up onto the bridge and fight Miraji. And we will actually probably have Reclaiming the Delphinus be its own segment, the next boss fight be its own segment. So we'll sort of put things out. Because Mount Kazai was such a longer segment, I sort of want to fragment this one up so that people can just get to the highlight parts that they want to. So we'll sort of have like this be a thing, and then our next string of ship battles be a thing, and then our inevitable encounter with the Gigas be its own thing. And we can sort of talk about encounter design or sort of scenario design as we move forward with those things. Or at least I hope that is what we will do. But then again, remember, we've always talked about going back through spaces, and so this is the only real time that we get to encounter a combat space in the Delphinus, and we see it sort of damaged and all these things, and it's important that we build bonds with sort of even an inanimate thing like the Delphinus, because the Delphinus represents sort of the Delphinus as a ship represents a lot of things. It represents a subversion of Valua, sort of mechanized war against itself. It represents Enrique because it was supposed to be his flagship. It represents a certain degree of freedom just by the notion of it being our ship. It represents our crew and whatever attachment we have to the crew because of that. It's an icon within the game that has all kinds of implicit meaning to it. So getting to go through it again allows us to explore those things. And it's also partially a type of home that we have. It's our primary means of getting around the world, and it's our home outside of Crescent Isle. And so getting to go through the space is, to me, important because we don't have very many other times where, we can go through the space anytime we want, kind of pause the game on the overworld map and go into the ship and talk to our crew or whatever, but this is one of the few times where the game explicitly goes like, okay, we're going to put you through this familiar space. We are going to have people invading this thing you care about, and you are going to have to really go through it and sort of clean up the guts of the thing that you have some sort of sentimental value for. And I'm wasting magic for people who don't really need their magic. We are Vise the Valiant now, which means that we are getting very close to Vise the Daring. And we will be fighting Miraji. So Vise the Daring is right after this. So if we do all of our things correctly, we will be correct. It goes Daring, Dashing, Fearless, Hero, King of Rogues, Legend. That's how it goes, the last ones. I'm thinking we'll probably end up getting King of Rogues, but maybe I'm wrong. Right, and we like I've said, we have a lot of different interactions here. Enrique sort of being angrier. This is just a segment where there's a lot of intersecting emotions on the part of the characters in it, and I really enjoy it. So Miraji, not that difficult, but you want to get rid of the henchmen, right? So what we can do is sort of build up our spirit and sort of protect ourselves in the process. But it shouldn't be that bad. So here we go. We'll build up. And this is cool too because we're fighting in this space, and it's the Bridge of the Delphinus, a space that we're very familiar with, especially if you spend a lot of time in the space. But it has the flag that Miraji put up there instead of our flag and things like that, and so we have a certain degree to which we sit back and say like, oh well, that's bullshit. Right? We don't really like that. Actually, seems like a waste, but I'm just gonna whale the heck out of one of the enemies with Pirate's Wrath. Because the problem is, if he buffs them and they go into counter stance, it's not that big of a deal, but they'll do damage to us. It's just an annoyance more than anything. Miraji himself doesn't have a lot of health. He has like 3,000 or something. So one special attack or a decent round against him, like Pirate's Wrath, we can really do that. Because all he's really doing, because it makes sense. Like, he's just like this non-fightery guy, so we just fight him. And we can overpower him. I mean, I could just focus on him, but, it's easy to get rid of the enemies, too. Although, just for curiosity's sake, no, that's not... Yeah, so I'll attack there. Focus. I want to see if I can use Lunar Glyph against him. This is just me sort of entertaining my own curiosity right now. But this would be interesting to know for the next time I play through this game, because I will absolutely play through this game another time. Especially now that I've sort of gone through it. In this fashion, I want to play through it again, like, immediately after. And so knowing some tricks will be nice. So Lunar Glyph, let's see if we can stone Miraji. It'd be interesting if we could. Oh my god, you can! That's great. So... and that's great, because that's a skill that costs such a little amount, so... that's really great to know. And it will help us for the rest of this battle as well. So let's have people focus on just the one soldier. Although Vise will do Rain of Swords to sort of even the odds, but we will get in some big hits against these fellows, and then we can just use Lunar Glyph on Miraji, and we'll just rock the rest of this battle. Like I said, this isn't hard, but sort of understanding what tactics you have available at any given time in these games is also something that I really enjoy. Oh, because we beat up the other enemy, Enrique's just gonna focus on them, which is fine. So let's have them focus on that, and we'll have Lunar Glyph again, and we'll just attack. Really cool stuff. I like it. But you can see Miraji does not have a lot of health. And counter stance won't matter because we are using Cutlass Fury. He seems really susceptible to it too.
Prepare yourself.
I like it. What do I want to do, actually? That's a good question. We'll focus. Finish off the soldiers. And maybe we can end with Lunar Light, and we'll just keep on inhibiting or prohibiting Mirage's sort of freedom of movement. And we can just attack, attack, attack. It's really enjoyable. Because the worst that he attacks us with is, Wevlum? So it's like, that's no problem. Yeah, so we can just build up. Actually, we want to make sure we keep using Lunar Glyph. Easy fight. And a nice simple end to a segment where, man, I felt like I rambled a bit, and I apologize for it. I have varying degrees of cogency, so I hope you'll forgive me. No, actually, right? We want to... Oh, well, it's the beginning of the round no matter what, but Enrique and Vi's attacking should finish it off. This will heal everybody as we head into any potential further battles. Although I think most of what follows next is ship battles, but now it's like, haha. That might have defeated him right there. It's sort of fitting that Enrique gets the final hit.
We did it!
So, we will get our ship back. We will set up for the next encounter and go from there. Doing well, and Fina is getting very close to learning the skills that we want. We have an Aura of Valor, which I totally love. And so, we have taken back our ship from the treacherous Mirage. A nice end to sort of the segment. Enrique proving to be the better person. I like it. Time for us to even the odds. And a ship is coming in fast from starboard. The Draco. So in the next segment, we will fight... Vigoro's flagship, the Draco. So let's get into the start of that battle. And go from there. Our next target, the Draco. I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for watching. I love you very, very much. Bye.